Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Welcome to Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast, episode number 65, with me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
Thanks very much for joining us. How are you, Dave?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Good. That's good for you. Positive.
It's all right, isn't it? I'm not cream crackered for once. Tired, but not cream crackered. There is a difference.
I'll take that. It looks like being a good episode this time. Our main thrust of it is an interview with a little brewery from Swindon who you might well not have heard of. It's called Vibish Brewing, and they join us for a chat and a couple of beers. These guys, Dan and Tom, come across really, really well. They're really fun to chat to, really articulate, got lots of interesting stuff to say, and their beers are great as well, aren't they, Dave?
Yeah, they were a revelation as to how good they were.
We have got exploration of the Kahia Nelson hop. It goes on and on. Well, this kind of fascinated us because we had this hop on Hype or Tribe and we really didn't like it. So then we thought we'll try it again in a different beer. So we did that, didn't like it. Then on the last episode, inadvertently drank it in a beer from the Weekend Project, didn't we? And really enjoyed it. So we thought, right, one last time, let's go again. And we've got hold of a beer from a brewery from Bexhill-on-Sea called Three Legs Brewing Company. They've got a beer with Kahia Nelson and some other hops as well, just like the Weekend Project one. So we kind of think that this hop needs to be with other hops to make it shine. And we're going to get hopefully some clarity on that this time, Dave.
It's gone from sort of simple Hype or Tribe in that, is this beer any good or not because of the hop, to, well, what is it we don't like, to what do brewers think of the hop. So we're just trying to be very thorough with this. Promise we will do something different. We already know what we're doing for episodes 66 for Hype or Tribe. Don't worry, that's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to that one already, as well as looking forward to this one.
And we'll give listeners a bit of a clue. The next episode is out at the end of October, and that's quite key to working out what we're going to do for Hype or Tribe next time. So that is this episode. We've also got Tried and Tested, our favourite beer. I'll be talking about some of the things I've been up to. I seem to have been on a never-ending circuit of tap rooms recently. Been to lots and lots of tap rooms, so we'll tell you all about that. I was also down at the Brewers Congress in London. I've had beer festivals galore, so there's plenty to talk about. But we will kick it off, as we always do, with Brew to Me, where we try a beer from a brewery we haven't had before. Dave, where are you taking us to this time?
We actually need to get a boat because we're going to the Isle of Wight.
I have been to the Isle of Wight, but neither of us have been there on the podcast, have we?
No, not only are we going there for a brewery and a beer I've never had or heard of until recently, it's an award-winning beer, no less. So we're on the Isle of Wight, and we are at White Knuckle Brewery.
You think of the Isle of Wight, and you don't think craft beer, do you? You think holiday makers, swigging warm, brown, liquid.
And as we will find out, that is very much not the case. Fergus tells us that, like a lot of the UK and areas, again, like with Vibish, who we'll get to in due course, there is a revolution going on. So the beer I have is their pale ale. No name to it or anything. Nice blue can. The hops involved are Chinook, Cascade, and Simcoe. So I'm expecting quite a bitter pale.
Yeah.
4%. The taste, it says sweet, spicy, citrus, and berry. And as I mentioned earlier, this beer was an award-winning beer. It claimed the gold for pale ale.
Yes, it was a SEBA award-winning beer. This is interesting with those hops because the definition there doesn't use the word bitter, and that's what I would expect this to be with those hops.
And you know what? It's not that bitter. Certainly not as bitter as I expected.
I'd often be put off by your likes of Cascade and Chinook and think, maybe that's not for me, but not necessarily the right way to go.
It's probably a lazy view, isn't it? Because I would do the same, and I'd think, I know what that's going to taste like. It'll be a little bit fruity to start with, and then it's going to go really bitter, and it will just keep being bitter, like, yeah, okay, that's fine, but do I really want a beer like that right now? Probably not. However, so this pours nice amber colour, no head. I'd say it pours like a traditional beer. This is craft, but it's not necessarily Big Fruit Bomb or anything like that.
I think you've probably got to tread carefully with those types of beers in an area like the Isle of Wight, because you suddenly turn up there making those beers. People are going to wonder what on earth's going on because they're not exposed to them.
There is another brewery on the island, at least, which does do some craft, who I did try and reach out to a little while ago and didn't hear back. So if you're listening to this, I believe it's Islands on the island, then, you're always welcome. But back to this beer. It is fruity. It's not super fruit juice, tropical fruity. It's refreshingly citrus.
I think I'm right in saying this is one of their core beers, isn't it? So that would sort of chime with what you were saying, because this is how a core beer should drink. Not too challenging.
Yeah, it's easy drinking. It's refreshing. It's got slight bitterness at the end, but only slight. It's quite crisp. Very, very drinkable. You've got a can of this as well.
I had a lovely box of cans arrive this very day, actually, earlier on today, and this was in the box, and some other ones from them as well, I think.
Yeah, this is a nice beer, but Fergus and his brother are behind White Knuckle Brewery, so let's hear from them and find out how it all came about.
Hello, my name's Fergus. I am the co-founder of White Knuckle Brewery. I started with my brother and my dad. We started back in 2021. My brother and myself both have a lot of experience in home brewing. Both started doing a lot of home brewing in university, and then kind of, lockdown classic accelerated that vocation. And then my dad has run pubs for 15, 20 years. The current pub that my dad runs at the time was the Pilot Bay Inn, and he has some spare sheds out the back. So I think it was on Christmas Day, that would have been 2020, we kind of agreed to utilise some of his external buildings and set up a small little microbrewery. Kind of also saw that, the Isle of Wight, where we've grown up all of our lives, has never really had any kind of craft influence, unlike the sort of London craft beer scene. Got a couple of breweries, Yates, Island Ales and Goddard's, who are all very much traditional breweries. So we kind of thought Isle of Wight was missing a little bit of the sort of craft scene, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what Isle of Wight's doing, generally speaking, in terms of there's a real artisanal push from both the council, but also just from entrepreneuring businesses. You've got like Numwell Home Farm, which are regenerative farmers. You've got Isle of Wight tomatoes, which you can find in pretty much every M&S and Waitrose around the UK. Isle of Wight garlic is also really famous from the garlic farm. And you've got Mermaid Gin, who also can be found in pretty much every bar around the UK now. So some really fantastic products coming from the Isle of Wight, and we wanted to kind of be a part of that and part of that craft beer scene. So yeah, in April 2021, we brewed our first beer on our kit, which was 500 litres. Fast forward a little bit, and we then took over the pilot boat in 2022, and we've run that ever since. And in 2023, we then completely outgrew the pilot boat and started looking for a new place to brew. So we moved to Numwell Farm. Basically, he's a very kind of entrepreneuring landlord, guy called Rob Oglander, who's had the land for many years, and then he started to bring in some amazing businesses onto his land and reusing and upgrading his old barn buildings. So he's brought in White Whiskey, which is next door to us, ourselves, White Knuckle Brewery, and the Heron Restaurant, which are award-winning, beautiful food. So some really amazing businesses all on site, all next to each other, and we actually collaborated to create a restaurant called Bry, which is South African themed, cooking the meat from the farm and having our beers on tap and cocktails from the White Whiskey Company. That's where we're at now, and we now have the capacity to brew 9,000 litres per month. We're not quite there yet. We're at about 4,000 litres per month. We've done some weird and wonderful beers. It all kind of started, going back to April 2021, me and Ed used to brew most of the beers, and we still holding jobs in London until we can eventually pay for itself, but we're not quite there yet. So we used to go down every spare moment we had to go and brew the beer, and then we would sell it during that sort of springtime of April, May, June 2021. And then we brought in our head brewer called James, who was fantastic, diligent, hardworking head brewer, and came up with some amazing creative ideas, including our pale ale, which was now the award-winning pale ale. It won the SIBA Southeast Gold Award in 2023, and then in March 2024, we then won the Silver Award nationally for that beer. So that was kind of our biggest accolade to date. Absolutely fantastic beer. Unfortunately, James didn't get to see that Silver Award, and he actually he wanted to move off the island, so he's now working over at Farnham Brewery. So when James left in December 2023, we then brought in, or promoted internally really, Ben Plant, who is our head brewer at the moment. He's an amazing, diligent, innovative guy, and he's come up with and put his own stamp on a lot of our recipes. He's changed the yeast in a couple of our beers to make them more efficient and slightly fruitier tasting. He's also created an unfiltered lager, and he's only been going as head brewer now for 8 months or so. So amazing what he's been doing. with some of our beers and putting his own stamp on the brewery. So for us, it's onwards and upwards. Our ultimate dream is to kind of try and be in every pub on the island, and there's no reason we can't also spread a bit more nationally as well. So at the moment, I think we're in about 25 different pubs. Some take us just seasonally, some are on more permanently, and we bought a fleet of casks this year, so hopefully our cask scene will be one of our biggest pushes. So yeah, I think we sent you the pale ale. So that was the award-winning one. You'll probably see the little gold award on the can. I should mention we started canning last year, and now we're canning not huge amounts, but we're doing a good trade on the cans, and it's really nice to obviously have a small pack available. So yes, when people come and visit Bry, we also open our doors as well. So people come in, pop in, and we've been doing tours of our brewery. We've got a massive space now. It would kind of blow you away if you visited it compared to what we had at the pilot boat in. We've got so much room to grow. If we ever want to get more fermentation tanks, more bright tanks, bigger brewing capacity, we're ready to go. And I do recommend anyone to come by our brewery. Come for a tour. We've got Keith, who's an amazing tour guide who's been with us literally from the beginning as a consumer more than an employee at the beginning. We've got amazing bunch of people, and yeah, onwards and upwards is our big ambition. Thanks so much for your podcast, and hopefully this is everything you need.
Well, thanks a lot, Fergus. I've picked up from that lots and lots of details, one of which this is another lockdown brewery.
Yeah, real lockdown brewery as well. Christmas was the that was the second lockdown, wasn't it?
It is just amazing how many people turned their hands to brewing beer commercially during that period of time. If it wasn't for COVID and what happened, putting aside all the terrible stuff that happened during that, the whole brewing scene would look so different, I think.
It's interesting, isn't it? It was the Kickstarter for that kind of thing. Like, if it hadn't happened, where would we be? It's an interesting question. I love the ambition, by the way, of them wanting to be on every pub in the island. Yeah. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, that is great, isn't it? I don't know how many pubs there are on the Isle of Wight, but what a great ambition that is. Wherever you go, you'll see White Knuckle Brewery beers. I love that. That's what drives these businesses on. You've got to have the ambition.
I must say, I was surprised at the capacity they're putting out. Like, it's not insignificant, isn't it?
No, I mean, they started with a 500-litre kit, and they now can produce
9,000.
9,000. That's some leap in that time.
It is, isn't it? And again, without running down the Isle of Wight, it's not a big place.
No.
It's a lot of beer to be putting into one populace.
Yeah.
Because I know their beer does travel a little bit, and obviously they're open to putting it out there a bit more, but it's not going that far yet.
So the huge proportion of that beer produced is staying on the island. I love the expression on the island. We used to have a colleague who lived on the island, didn't we? Remember?
We did have a colleague who lived on the island. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Wonder if he's tasted White Knuckle. I'll have to ask him. I think this is a thumbs up, isn't it?
Definitely.
And I tell you what, having listened to what Fergus said there, I'd love to go and have a look round there and have some food there and all that. It sounds like a wonderful day out.
I had a family holiday many moons ago, and the garlic farm which he spoke about, we stayed there.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we had a family holiday many years ago as well. I got sunburnt and I couldn't move.
So it brought back some memories along with the God's Hill Model Village. They're my two abiding memories of the Isle of Wight.
Well, so this is a thumbs up anyway for this beer, isn't it?
Definitely. Thumbs up for the beer, thumbs up for the brewery. Looking forward to trying what else they sent.
You've just had an award-winning beer. I've got an award-winning brewery. This brewery was recently crowned the best small brewery in Scotland. They've had quite a few Scottish breweries on here, and this was another one that was fairly new to me when I found them recently, Jump Ship Brewing. And they are Scotland's only dedicated alcohol-free brewery, so it's all 0.5% ABV or less. And it's not something we usually do on the podcast, especially in this feature.
I've seen Jump Ship, but haven't ever had any. I'm really quite interested to see what you make of it, because as we've sort of discussed before, there is this movement now to lower ABV. The alcohol-free beer I had from a future guest, in fact, I was very, very impressed with. So I'd be really intrigued to see what you make of this.
I'm sort of getting more and more into the alcohol-free stuff because I'm going out and about and doing a lot of festivals and stuff. I'm sort of drinking quite a bit. Then I don't really then want to drink on, but days when I'm not at events. So to drink alcohol-free stuff is a sort of good compromise. One of the people we follow on Instagram is the Sober Boozer. He drinks exclusively alcohol-free stuff. So I sort of see lots of Mash Gang and breweries like that from him, and everybody is dipping their feet into the alcohol-free zone. But this will be interesting now because they are dedicated alcohol-free. This is a Galaxy IPA, 0.5%. Now, Galaxy, as we know, is quite intense, and I chose this one purposely to see if that Galaxy comes through, even though there's no alcohol in it.
I think as well with this, I'd be fascinated to see what the body is like, because if you had that hop with no body, I could imagine that'd be quite an unpleasant experience.
Right, so if you gave me this and said, what hop is it? I should be able to tell. It is single hop Galaxy. I think I would get it. And I don't think I'd say to you, that's alcohol-free. No, I wouldn't. It's also gluten-free and vegan-friendly as well. So literally anybody can have this.
And what would you say then? If you said it wasn't alcohol-free, would you think, that's a session beer, or is it like...
I don't know. Because it's got all that sort of intense Galaxy flavour in there, which is a little bit fruity and a bit bitter at the back end. It just tastes quite authentic.
I don't think you can ask for anything better, can you, from that description? If it tastes authentic, then that's mission accomplished.
I mean, Galaxy is not my favourite hop. It's not your favourite hop. That tastes like Galaxy tastes. Yes, it probably could have some more body. Apart from that, that's interesting. It tastes I'd say it tastes like a 4% Galaxy pale.
Which I don't think I've ever seen, actually. They're usually stronger when Galaxy's involved, I find.
There's a few more tones coming out now. A little bit more flowery and fruity. Bitterness is subsiding a little bit on the back. I really didn't know what to expect from that. And I would never usually gravitate towards a single-hopped Galaxy beer.
It's quite a brave one to take on in your range of alcohol-free. There's easier ones to do, surely.
Yeah, I mean, you just think, your Citra, Mosaic, the usual ones. What is interesting about these guys is they brew it to 0.5% or less. They don't brew it and then take the alcohol out of it, which is what some places do. They brew it specifically for low ABV to start with. As Sonia Mitchell, the founder, will now explain to us.
Hi, I'm Sonia Mitchell, the founder of Jump Ship Brewing. We are Scotland's first and only dedicated alcohol-free brewery. I started Jump Ship 4.5 years ago, really from my love of beer and horror of hangovers. And like many people hit that point in life where I no longer wanted that fuzzy head next day, but still really wanted a good beer. And the ones that I tried just didn't quite fit what I was looking for. So I set off on a voyage of discovery to brew my own. It was long and a difficult process to get a beer that was good enough, and then to scale that commercially was really tricky. But I got there, launching in December 2019 with one beer, flagship Yardarm. Over the past few years, we've grown from there. This year is a huge year for us. In January, we opened our doors to our brand new brewery located in Pathhead, which is just outside Edinburgh. And it really is a dream come true to have total control of our production and to really push for more innovation and quality in the alcohol-free space. So we've got a core range of 4 beers: lager, IPA, pale ale and stout. Now with the new brewery, we're moving into bigger cans and to exploring new styles. So far this year, we've done Gooseberry Goes, New England IPA, a double dry hopped Galaxy IPA with a Pacific Pilsner due out next month. We brew our beers to be naturally less than 0.5, so we're not relying on any artificial extraction techniques, and we're also not just blending malt syrups and sodas. So it's a proper beer brewed like any other beer using hops and yeast, and we're just carefully managing that fermentation so we don't tip over 0.5. But the yeast is really important, and that fermentation that happens, even though it's only minimal, and it really transforms the flavour into that really beery quality you expect from a great drink. I've invested in our own canning line, which is great, and also pasteurisation, because one of the trickiest things about alcohol-free beers is the shelf life. We don't have the protection that alcoholic beers have. So by being able to gently pasteurise our cans, we can preserve a good shelf life at room temperature and also preserve the flavour. as well. We're also this year rolling out into draft, which is great because I think there's nothing better than a proper pint of beer, and if it's in a pint glass, it doesn't matter what the ABV is. So looking to see more jump ship pints across Scotland and beyond. And we brew our beers to be as inclusive as possible. So not only are they alcohol-free, they're also gluten-free and vegan. Realised quite soon on that if you're gluten-free and alcohol-free, your choices are really limited. And so for me, having beers that everyone can enjoy is really important. And we're really looking at sustainability as well in our operations. So we brew on 100% renewable energy, using solar, and about to plug into local biomass to use that to heat our brew house, making sure that as much waste from the brewery is reused as possible, whether that's spent grain going to animal feed or composting our hops. Yeah, so really exciting times for Jump Ship. We just picked up an award for their best small brewery in Scotland. Been working really hard to get to where we are now, and looking forward to the next steps. Yeah, thank you for the feature. And I hope that more of your listeners are going to be discovering Jump Ship.
Well, that was a really informative piece there from Sonia. Really, really interesting to listen to. Really concise. Excellent. Thank you very much for sending that in. And for also sending a whole load of beers. I think there was 12 beers in the box, which is really, really generous. There's a Gooseberry Goes in there, which I'm looking forward to having, and various other beers. I was debating whether to send some down to you, Dave, but I'm not sure whether alcohol-free is you're really getting on board with the alcohol-free stuff just yet.
I think, as you sort of said at the start, your presence and your drinking habits are very different to mine at the moment, because you're out there, you're meeting a lot of people, you're doing a lot of festivals, you're doing a lot of tap rooms, which obviously involves a fair amount of drinking. So then your let-ups are the in-betweens, whereas I'm probably more on a cycle of I don't do that. So it's more a couple of days off and then a steady trickle rather than a big flood and then a drought. So if I am having a drink, it's going to be a drink.
Yeah.
I'm not probably going to have one to have an alcohol-free.
What I should do is keep a couple of these back, and next time you come up here and we're having a few cans, I'll slip one of these in and see.
Placebo.
Yes.
See if I notice.
Let's see if you notice. Just recently, my wife gave me a beer and said, try this. And she gave it me. I said, yeah, it's all right. It's fine. Nothing wrong with that. And it was Beavertown's neck oil. But when you're drinking something blind, you have no prejudices, do you? You know, if I'd have seen that was neck oil, I'd have probably thought, oh, this isn't going to be very nice. It wasn't superb. It was just fine. When you're completely blind and you have no knowledge of what you're drinking, you tend to get a much more honest opinion. So I'm going to keep it back and slip it into one of our drinking sessions at some point.
You say that, it reminds me, we should probably do some blind tasting again at some point. We haven't done any for a little while. It's always quite good fun.
Yes, we should do. Making a fool of myself. Yeah, it's always good fun. But anyway, so basically, big thumbs up for Jump Ship. I'm really interested to try the rest of their stuff. White Knuckle gets the thumbs up from you. 2 more great breweries, which we hadn't heard of before. A few months ago, I was at Stratford upon Avon Racecourse. There was no racing on, but there was lots of food vendors, and there was 2 beer vendors there. One of them was Copper Beach, and the other one was Vibish Brewing from Swindon. And I met Dan, and Dan joins us now. Welcome to the podcast, Dan.
Evening all. Thank you so much for having us. Looking forward to talking everything beer.
But you're not alone, are you? Who else is there?
No, we've got Tom alongside me as well.
Hi, everybody. Again, to echo Dan, thanks for having us. Didn't have the pleasure of meeting you up at Stratford. That was my off day. But looking forward to having a chat and a beer tonight.
Dan and Dave have met each other, but I've not met either of you, so we're in the same.
We'll just have a beer in the background then.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine.
Excellent. Well, welcome to the podcast. Like I was just saying to you before we hit the button, this is all about letting people know about what you do. So how long have you been going for?
We started socially in about 2019. That's when we set up the brewery. Obviously slowed down a little bit by the time sort of March 20 came around and the dreaded COVID hit. But we sort of progressed beyond then, 21, 22, into sort of selling local bars, kegs and cans, and finally opened the tap room in May 23, going steadily since then.
I get the sort of impression that May 2023, when the tap room opened, that was when you really sort of took off as a business. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think we were very, intrinsic in ourselves, really. Just there was not really a face of the business. We kind of stayed very much in the background. We sold a couple of kegs to Old Town, kind of contacts we made for essentially drinking in Swindon. And then as and when the kind of tap room came around, that's when I guess the business needed a face or faces, and that's kind of where we start appearing on social media and kind of really pushing it out, because we need to get bums on seats and numbers in the door, really. So that was kind of our growth, and we've been able to kind of brew more beers since we've been there, and it's pushed us on to try new things, to kind of keep the taps kind of ever changing. That's the most important thing for us.
Well, yeah, I had a little look at Untapped, and you've done 54 different beers according to Untapped, which is pretty good going, actually, because most of those will have come in the last sort of couple of years, I guess.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, I think we aim to try and get on sort of 2 or 3 new beers every month, and occasionally go through a mad session and well exceed that. That's one great thing about having the tap room over what it was like being sort of, as Dan said, faceless and just selling kegs and cans, is that we've got enough feedback now and enough people through the door to understand, I guess, a bit more about what people want to drink with us as well. So, and they're a bit more forgiving for us going out and experimenting as well, which is quite nice. We've got lovely loyal sort of base down there, and they're forgiving for the average beers if they get a decent one occasionally.
I think you've probably actually got more beers than that. We're just rubbish at putting them on tap.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I think we've sort of talked to a lot of breweries around most of the UK, but I don't know that we've necessarily had much of sort of Swindon, Cirencester, the Gloucestershire area. What is the craft scene like there? Like, is there a lot of competition, or did you find like setting out you were sort of converting a lot of sort of more traditional people? Like, what I was going to say, what's the vibe down there? But obviously you're vibish, and that felt a terrible pun.
Honestly, it's what I think the first thing you said, that competition is a really interesting word, because ironically we found quite the opposite. Everybody down here has been really, really good. In terms of the scene, I guess you've got Hop Kettle are the biggest by a long way around us in Swindon. We know the guys over there pretty well. They've been ever so helpful for us throughout the whole time we've been going, and even dived into sort of buying kegs of stuff, stacking their actual bars as well, which are, exclusive to Tap and Brews. So yeah, they're the biggest. Drink Valley in Swindon as well. Another really lovely family running a brew pub in-house. And similarly, really, they've been sort of along the journey with us too. Were the first people we chatted to, I think, sort of 3 years ago, where we bundled in with a cool box full of cans, and again, with the same cans straight in the fridge, and happy to go through it. And Broadtown Brewery, they're probably the third biggest in sort of the Swindon surrounding areas. Slightly different, more like classic ales, but really, really nice guys and really good beer as well. Slightly further out of Swindon, probably between sort of Swindon and sort of South Wales.
Broadtown, are they the ones with a llama?
Yes.
We've had them on the podcast.
We've had Broadtown, but interestingly, I don't want to belie my ignorance and speak for Dave, but Hop Kettle, completely new to me. Hadn't heard that name until you just had a look, and while you were talking, I just had a quick look at the website. I've never seen a Hop Kettle. Have you, Dave?
I could say it rings a vague bell, but yeah, like you, Dave, it's not really chiming very much with me. It's interesting, isn't it, that we're in all completely different areas, and our experiences of a brewery are very different.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're sandwiched in Swindon between sort of Dale and Cheltenham, and then Bristol and Bath, which have got tons and tons of breweries as well. And it's not really sort of fully hit here yet, to be honest. And we're obviously hoping to ride the coattails when it does.
So, what made you guys want to get into it then? Sort of, it's been now 5 years, and you're obviously still going, so you must be enjoying it.
A kind of similar story to a lot of breweries, really. We don't have any professional qualifications per se in the brewing industry, and haven't worked in operations at all in brewing. We got into it just through drinking lots of beer, really, deciding we were spending lots of money on beer, and thought it couldn't be that hard to make something that we wanted to taste. And we were always searching for that, so we thought we'd give it a go. Found out very quickly that it wasn't as easy as we first thought, and made some horrendous beers, if we're being brutally honest with ourselves. But it was essentially, we were sat in a pub, write out a very loose business plan on the back of a beer mat, and go from a 25 litre grain father to a 1 barrel kit, and just go for it, really. It seems a bit blasé looking back on it now, but at the time I don't think we really thought about it too much. It just kind of organically happened, and then suddenly we were producing lots more beer than we could ever drink.
So what was your background then? What were you doing before you decided to make beer for the people of Wiltshire?
So I worked in the youth justice system. So I worked for a local council, working with children and families that had run-ins with crime, essentially. And my team would, seek to kind of support them back into better living and more support. And Tom?
I'm an accountant, so probably a sort of snippet to the other the more present part of our story. So,
there's always an accountant involved in these breweries. So.
I know. You know what it means, of course. I stopped brewing a while ago, and now I just do the boring stuff for the business. Yeah, so I'm an accountant. I still work full time. Dan's the man behind the business. He's the man on the floor. With hopefully in the sort of future that changing to as we grow a bit. But currently there's one of us on there full time, and then I work the bar effectively at the moment and do the boring maths and stuff.
So the aim would be for you to both be sort of full time in the brewery ultimately. Yeah,
it's got to be. That was the dream initially when you sit around with your mates and chat about owning a brewery. Kind of thing. That was always the plan. Sort of hopefully brew a good beer to start off with, and that obviously took a few goes with some horrible white plastic buckets and some brown sludge inside them. Then you brew your first good beer, and then you drink it all on a kegerator you made, and that was it really. You're on the roller coaster then. And
I think it's an interesting thing to say though, because realistically a dream for us at that point was to sell a can or see one of our products behind the bar in a fridge, and then very quickly built to we want to see it on tap somewhere, and it's just kind of grown from there really.
I always think that in life you want something, and then when you get it, you want the next bit, then the next bit, and the next bit. I guess that's sort of human nature. You always want to improve yourself and kick on your journey.
Yeah, that's it. And I think Dan said a minute ago that organic is kind of the word really. We didn't, we had low aspirations. We probably still do if we're honest, to be honest. But you kind of get a point in where you're saturated quite quickly. We started on a 1 brew barrel kit, and we found very, very quickly that was too small. And within a year, we're looking at bigger and sort of more space. And it wasn't planned. It just happens, I think, quite naturally. And that's good. That's exciting. It's just it's obviously a little bit nervy as well, isn't it? I think.
What size kit have you got to now then?
Still 1 barrel.
Still one. Yeah,
you're still there.
Yeah, we're managing to just about meet demand. But and I guess going back to your point, Dave, it allows us to brew lots of different beers really quickly because we can get through it quite quickly. We haven't got lots and lots of stock hanging around. It's not great to kind of some extent because we don't really have beer to sell other places. That's why any of your listeners wouldn't have seen us on any kind of e-beer or any beer wholesaling sites because we just don't have the volume to sell. We can only just about sell it locally, and then the rest of it goes through the tap room. So
the great thing is that when you do expand, you can kick it out nationally, and there will hopefully be an audience there ready to drink it.
Yeah, otherwise we're drinking a lot ourselves, certainly. Just again, not bursting the boat, is it?
I assume Dan doesn't sleep if it's 1 brew kit and you're doing 3 beers a month. Like you're just
you're 2 or 3 brews every week at the moment, and then obviously the clean, the kegging. We got all our own kegs as well. We made a decision quite early because we were local to buy our own kegs, so it's not like we have a sort of a keg rotation. We deliver, we collect.
Yeah, so you're out and about with those kegs all the time.
That's what we've learned from being on such a small kit. It's just a very manual process and not very efficient. That's the big thing for us is the brew efficiency. Just not having that level of stock going through, and then we have to do everything 10 times. As you said, Dave. Yep. So it's it's tough, but certainly enjoyable.
I tell you what, I've got to say this, Dave. What beer are you drinking?
So I'm drinking the yellow one.
So have you got that one?
Oh, the yellow one, yeah.
Yes.
That is really, really good. It's really good.
I'm glad to say that because I think that's about 5 months old now, so we were a bit worried.
You've got nothing to be worried about. That is so soft, so fruity, zero bitterness. That drinks really well. What do you think, Dave?
I echo what Dave says. Super soft, really fruity. Yeah, lovely colour. Really, really nice beer. I imagine probably one of your most popular ones when you've had it.
Yes, I actually brewed it a couple of days ago as well. So it's going to be back on soon. It's actually one of our first. Well, I think
it
might have been the first ever beer we brewed on the 1 brew barrel kit or that style. So essentially, I don't think we've ever been as organised actually. So when we first set out to sell beers, we just decided that for ease, because of grain order, etc., what we would do is make 4 beers and a series and just use the same base recipe throughout the series and then just change the hops. So we had the green one, blue one, yellow one, and pink one. And they were Idaho, Amarillo, Citra, and Mosaic, and they were just single hops all the way through. They've been really well received locally, and people have been crying out for them more. We haven't really rebrewed them probably as much as we should, but yeah, they've been tinkered with a little bit from the kind of the initial and the start. But yeah, we were really, really happy with that kind of initial offering really when they first launched. So it was the base to where we are now. That whole series really.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the really good thing about doing it as well is using such a sort of different variety of hops that we learned quite quickly about how to use them in different parts. The hot and cold side. And what it does to the character itself. And that was probably why actually we enjoyed doing that 4th series, when we were sort of learning how to generate sort of a higher volume than just the 25 litre kit. So yeah, Yellow was the first beer we released. And that's probably, I don't know, this iteration is probably the 5th iteration since first release.
Yeah, somewhere like that, yeah.
There's nowhere to hide with single hopping beers as well. Like, if you don't get that right, people will know. It's kudos to be that you say, like, that's one of the first beers you've sort of did, and that's sort of been the foundation. That's a heck of a good foundation to have, because if you can master a single hop, you can probably master putting it with other hops.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the hopping in it is very generous. I think it's 14 grams a litre. I think it says on the can, doesn't it? 13, 14. Yeah, but we felt as though we could have probably gone with a double dry hop kind of badge on it, but at the time I think we were a bit worried about that, weren't we? And we kind of wanted to definitely get the customer's attention with, a pale ale being so heavily hopped and straight, rather than kind of badging it as that double dry hop initially. So it's got a fair whack of hops in it.
Got some meat to it, yeah.
You can definitely taste that.
I think it's fair to say that when we talk to people on the podcast and they send us their beers. Now, I had these beers off you at Stratford, right, and I didn't open any of them. This is my first beer from you. I wanted to keep it all, so I'd never tried one. And there's always that sort of anticipation, but also sort of trepidation. And you think, are these beers going to be any good? Do you get that as well, Dave?
I do. I like to think I've got a good enough poker face, but if I think it's not great, I think you struggle now to find a bad beer brewed by in the UK. Like, I think the scene as a whole is very decent, but I'm with you. Yes, you don't want to go, oh yeah, it's quite nice, and you're sort of like, I'm not going to remember this. I'll remember this really easily.
Yeah, there's absolutely no reason for us to sugarcoat it. This is really good. No. So much so that I've nearly finished it. I want to go and get another one from the fridge in a minute and try the next one, and I will do.
Cheers, guys. I appreciate it.
I wanted to ask you about the name, and also the names of the beers, because I can see it looks like you take a bit of sort of pop culture references, and you've done some really interesting looking stouts as well, without being like super 10% banana pancake waffle stouts. So is there one type of beer you'd like to brew, or do you just everything's in play?
We've definitely had to develop, and that's kind of having feedback from the customer. I guess I'd speak for us both on this one. I guess we would take our initial kind of thoughts and I guess inspiration. It's got to be Daya for us. Amazing beers. We love strong yellow hazy beers essentially, and they are the kings of that, certainly locally. That's what we would love to brew and drink all the time. We very, very quickly learnt that through the tap room, our customers don't want strong beers. Everybody wants sessionable 4 to 5% that they can essentially have one of every beer and then kind of crack on their way, sort of thing. We tried to release a double IPA, didn't we, and a couple of stronger ones, and people like them. We just couldn't get through them at the tap room.
That's really interesting.
We're opposite. We would go. I wouldn't necessarily go to the taps and be like, right, I want the strongest beer, but we would be looking, going, well, I'm going to have one of those before I leave, and I wouldn't be worried about drinking a 7 to 10% beer. It wouldn't be a problem.
This all boils down to that when you're running a business or a beer business, the big beers are for beer geeks like us. Normal people don't want to drink those. They're probably a little bit sort of scared of them as well. Yeah.
It's been really interesting because I think it was you sort of said earlier that outside of those sort of three, 4 other breweries kind of thing, it is still quite new, and that is largely the culture. We do have a lot of people that come in and just want a lager. And don't get me wrong, I love a lager as much as the next man can't. We've had many nights. Certainly, when we were building the brewery a long time ago, we just sat and had 2 or 3 pints of Stella in the local sort of De Vere afterwards, kind of thing, and that's great. There's always a place to that. But what's been nice is also seeing the other side of it, where people do try and actually come in again, and they are starting to drink the other stuff. It's starting to the culture is starting to change. There is more of an appreciation about, why is that beer cloudy? I don't want a cloudy beer. That's not a beer kind of thing. It's got to be crystal clear and all that stuff. And it's starting to shift a bit. So it has more sort of nationally, but certainly domestically by us, it's just starting to shift a lot. So it's been nice to be a very little bit of that.
I think something interesting for me certainly was I wasn't expecting sour beer to be so popular. Our customers just go through it like there's no tomorrow. They love the fruity sour beers, don't they? So we brewed one just because of the name of someone's piece of artwork they were going to use on a can, and then it kind of went from there, and people loved it, didn't they? So
we can't keep on top of the sour brewing.
No,
in earnest. Obviously, we kettle sour, so it's a slightly longer process anyway in terms of it constitutes 2 brew days effectively. But yeah, it's we physically can't brew enough sours to keep one tap going on sour throughout the tap room all the time. The one thing you think would be really unusual that people wouldn't want.
Yeah, they're so divisive, aren't they?
Especially fruited sours.
Yeah,
that's
the way you were talking, I was like, oh, that sounds like sort of what I can remember. And it's really interesting that other areas are still doing it. But then if you brought a sour beer in, that's not going to shift here. And it's fascinating that another part of the country, you guys can't brew it quick enough, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, we're placing a lot of faith, sort of the social nature of the tap room. And for most of the people that come in, it will be, we sort of how many beers we've got on tap. And then, we tend to push the testers quite a lot, and so naturally with a sour you'll get one way or the other. It will come wow, I didn't realize a beer would taste like that, or oh my god, that's disgusting, I'll never see it again. But because of it, I think it's just it has probably encouraged, like I said, we did a strawberry sour with our first birthday in the tap room.
We wanted to send that to you guys actually, because that's what we were panicking about when we said about kind of coming on and us organising the time. We wanted to kind of get some cans of those down to you, but we actually couldn't because we sold out.
we didn't even many. It was like 200 cans and then 5 kegs, but it went within 3 days. Given the context of how big we are, within a week. That's madness for us. Sour's been the one that surprised me.
Yeah, we had a cherry Hefeweizen on at the same time, and that went pretty quick as well. Yeah. So it's good. If we could just have every beer kind of selling that quick, that'd be amazing. Fantastic.
Yeah, the stouts go quite slowly traditionally. Ironically, given the sort of conversation we had a minute ago about the sort of stouts, they traditionally go quite slow for us. We've done 2 or 3 that sort of gone out quickish. There was a coffee stout we did with a local coffee company, Poor Boys, that went pretty swiftly, but for the most part, they go quite slowly. Yeah.
Are your customers really honest? If you give them something and they don't like it, will they tell you?
Yeah, well, because we're such a small operation, the kind of customers that we have coming in all of the time, we see them, as part of the business really when we're looking at it, and people are really happy to give us sometimes quite brutally honest feedback, but it's never been too bad. We like to, if people are in the tap room and we are, I don't know, kegging or testing a beer, we like to give out samples and say, this has been brewed, this at this stage, do you want to have a try, so that people can see the different stages of the kind of beer transformation process as well. Again, just to make people kind of feel part of that brewing journey. Absolutely. So you kind of get some feedback throughout there as well.
You had an event just recently. I was looking at it. I was almost thinking, shall I come down and have a look and get a ticket for it? A sort of a behind-the-scenes look at the brewery and stuff. How did that go?
Yeah, it was a twofold thing for us. One was, as we said, our first birthday was quite recent. It was a bit of an opportunity to say thank you to sort of the loyal base we've got. So we sort of put on a keg and people got to pour themselves and have some nibbles and stuff that night, which was good fun. And it was also a bit of an opportunity for us to chat about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what's coming up in the future. We've got big decisions to make about brew kit and sort of location and size of space, and also get feedback, because we chat to these people all the time. It's really nice having these social interactions, but you never really hear what people think of you kind of thing until you sort of put everybody in a room together and have a chat. And it was really, really nice. There's a lot of things about community and stuff, which is good because that's ultimately what we're trying to build. A lot about how involved people feel with the actual space. And there's a little bit about concern about us moving on and what that means for obviously Vivish and location stuff as well. So really interesting, really nice to have everybody in a room together, and really nice to have everybody sort of so open as well, to be honest.
We do everything the way that we think that we would want it, or that we can do on our kind of shoestring budget, that kind of stuff. But it was nice to hear from a customer's perspective what they would like to see there. And we forget sometimes that we know the ins and outs of all the beers, and it kind of passes us by. So a really quick win for us was just around, we've tried menus before and it didn't really work. And because we go through so many beers, it would just be so much printing. But we do have a TV, so we can just present an online menu with some tasting notes to it. And that's going to be a really quick win for us to be able to support the customers. So we got some really good, honest feedback and some kind of bits that we can actually work on to make everybody's kind of experience a little bit better.
Yes, definitely something we can do again. It was really, really useful.
Not to denigrate on other breweries, but do you guys feel like as a sort of brewery, you're the most connected to customers that we've probably had on?
And
if you disagree, Dave,
the energy also is tremendous.
It's a need for us. Like we really need to connect with that customer base. We are a tiny brewery in the scale of things. And like we said, our USP is lots of new beers, pretty much the same people through the tap room. So we really need to make sure that we retain that customer base. To do that, we're just kind of building on experiences that we've had at other breweries and just trying to kind of pull them all into one, really. Just I think, Tom said it earlier on, the brewing industry or the brewing industry that we've experienced is the most friendly, helpful kind of environment that we could ever wish for. There's some big breweries around us and some big businesses that will absolutely help us out if we're in a jam or need support. And that's just something that we kind of are really thankful for and really happy to have that. And we want to pass that on to other people. And we want to kind of, just really promote the beer world and get people understanding more about the beer that they're drinking.
So you said it there, you're a tiny brewery, but what's the sort of long-term goal? Do you want to stay a tiny brewery or become a bit of a bigger tiny brewery? How far do you want to go?
Bigger. We need to get a bit bigger because otherwise we're not going to make any money.
Yeah. It's not sustainable. We did a Brewers Journal event early this year. Yeah, we had a few conversations with people. They were very honest and, again, very friendly and very honest and really good conversations. So it's not sustainable, and I think, to quote, you're not going to make any money on that. And, we've done all right. We have done all right, thankfully. The truth in it is it's not sustainable, to be honest. We couldn't feasibly both work, for instance, with the brewery on a one brew barrel kit. It's not possible kind of thing, not for the amount of supply you have to get out the door. So, yeah, it is getting bigger. And with that does mean bigger space and what have you as well. So I don't know what the long-term goal is, to answer your question. We kind of go on a 2 to 5 year basis, and we're probably 2 or 3 years ahead where we expect to be now. So we're in the middle of doing the same thing again, writing a bit of a business plan, assessing where we're at and looking at the options. And yeah, we know we need to grow, and for the next 2 to 5 years, it will be that. Probably focus on the 5 to 10 brew barrel size and the space attached to that, and how to keep it still with the same sort of social.
I think a lot of the breweries we talked to before, you feel like at that leap of faith territory now. Like you've got to go for it, but then when 50% of you is an accountant, I imagine that's very hard to do because it's doing it but balancing it all out, so you feel like you can do it but not suddenly be massively in the red.
You know what? I'd say
the other way around.
You're probably more, Dan's more sensible, more hesitant than I. Probably because I've got numbers in front of me all the time. Maybe not. I don't know. But we've certainly made a few leaps of faith. Dan going full time is a big one. Jumping into a tap room from absolutely nowhere, sort of that time, and both have so far worked out. Built a bit of resilience, built a bit of customer base. I guess the risk on the next one is bigger kit, bigger investment, and trying to at the same time keep that customer base, because it's going to be really difficult to do that and sort of stay in the same location exactly. So it's the extra challenge now is, rather than just sort of us making a decision for us, it's us making a decision that's more conscious of the business and what that represents, I guess, a little bit as well.
And also your customers, which, as you say, that seems to be your big thing. What's the point in having a 5-10 barrel kit if you've suddenly moved 10 miles away, for example, and all your customers that you've just generated are like, well, yeah, I can't come to you now. So
that's it. Yeah, we've no issue with Blue Sky thinking. We'd have no issue with moving, and if everybody was going to sort of come with us, it's not going to be the case. And that's the challenge, is either accepting that won't be the case and being really sort of gutted about it, or trying to work a way for it to be in the same sort of location and accept the compromise that, really interesting conversations you got at the moment, certainly. We're in a pickle, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Almost daily.
Are you talking about this sort of thing all the time between the two of you?
Yeah. We back and forth over a few beers usually until we sort of forget about what we're talking about and then just enjoy a couple more beers. I think it's the usual evening, isn't it? But a good problem, a really good problem to have.
It's a good problem because the beers are good. You have the customer base. It's now just how do you put it all together to take the next step without losing what you've put together already, I guess, which sounds very easy when you just say it in a sentence like that. So what have you got sort of in your head, at least for beers coming up, as something that's a bit more fun?
Desperate to kind of not sort of crack the cask sort of market, because I think that is pretty much a lot of the big breweries that we mentioned kind of specialize in that area, and just purely because of the size of the tap room and the footfall we get, we haven't really been able to do cask because we just end up throwing too much beer away. the worst thing you can ever do is throw beer down the drain. So kind of taking small footsteps into the cask world. So we've cast a couple of beers recently. We've got a couple of casks going out to beer festivals as well. So that'll be interesting. So this week has been a bit of a brewing week, actually. So we've got a black IPA, previously went down really well. It's not a new brew, called Squid Ink. We've got brew plans for sort of like a late German beer festival. So a Berliner Weiss, a Weiss beer and a Helles. I really want to kind of brew a Belgian style beer. So we'll probably have a Belgian Christmas special, maybe something a little bit stronger to get the taste buds rocking. We can only really plan about 2 months in advance, really. We don't really plan too much because so many things can go wrong. We end up all over the place on, if something doesn't ferment out quite right or something needs a little bit longer conditioning. If we have a huge plan, the whole thing just shifts. So we just try and keep it on a 6-week sort of plan just to keep us on track, really. Otherwise, I personally would just get lost in everything and it would all go out the window. So really short time frame on those. And we can also, in that, if we're not fixed on a dedicated kind of brew schedule, we can get that feedback from the customers. We can say, what do you guys fancy? What do you want to drink next month? Or what would you like to see? So that's where we're at really at the minute.
That is a lot. As you said, Dan, you've sort of come in with no brewing experience in the sense of, you've not tutored under anyone and that. How do you find, not necessarily the time, but does it, I guess it must come naturally to an extent, or do you just sort of I
think there's so much content online. Yeah, it's just unbelievable. The world of the YouTube and a Google search, and there's plenty of beer recipes and things online. There's some unbelievable home brewing going on out there. That's just people just tried recipes. We kind of base a lot of what we do around those tried and tested recipes and kind of tweak it to how we want to see those come out. And the research comes in the different grains and the different hops and the different yeasts and how we can combine that. But the base beers or the kind of base recipes is something that we kind of try to look for something tried and tested already and go from there, really. Certainly if it's a new style we've never brewed, because we don't have our homebrew kit anymore, we just go for it.
Have you done a lot of work on your water chemistry by any chance?
We have over the years, yeah. I mean, honestly, we use Murphy & Sons as our sort of reference. We always chat to those. Probably once every 6 months, we'll send water samples up there. We'll test them, provide a bit of feedback, and then ask for different things as well. So, we've asked for ghost, sour, wit, Weiss, different sort of profiles before, and we chuck them through. And we have experienced a little bit with changing the salts rather than anything else in there at the moment. But in earnest, they're fantastic. So we haven't had to mess around too much, to be honest.
The only reason I ask is I nipped to the fridge and grabbed another beer, and I've got the Any Day IPA now. And again, it is so soft. Are all your beers like this?
No, we changed up quite a bit, and we've definitely had some hands on heart. We've had some dodgy ones along the way, kind of thing. Some that we've intended to be something very different and had to change because of it, kind of thing. There was probably a year ago, I think, we had a real problem with clarity, for instance, in our beers. We were getting a lot of haze drop out where we weren't expecting it. So there's been a lot of same principle, just a lot of late nights researching, sometimes chatting again, local breweries have been very helpful, and messing around with different things to try and do different stuff or get different results. And we're not, by no means are we there yet. We are not professional brewers. This has been a long journey and a lot of work to get there, but we're starting to get to a point now where we can work these things out properly. And I think the last time we've had a conversation or a late night Googling session was a while back now. So what we are aiming to do now, we are more often than not actually achieving.
So do you find that your beers are improving as your confidence grows as well?
Yeah, I think a big step for us was when we had more time at the brewery. So when we were both working full time, we were brewing when we could. So we were brewing on a Saturday morning at 5-6 o'clock in the morning before opening the tap room in the afternoon, and then they're at points sporadically in the week. But since I've been able to have more time there, we've just been able to be more consistent. So we've been able to hop on the correct days. We've been able to, really tighten up our temps, timing, schedules. And it's really, really showing in the beers. It's not anything different, but just us planning and doing it at the right time. Our hardest thing is having a core range and keeping to it. We can't keep hold of it long enough. So we do find ourselves in a fortunate position. I'm sure lots of brewers would love to be in our position of being able to kind of mess around a little bit more and brew lots of different new beers rather than having to stick to your same old core range and brewing it.
I think that's a really good point, because a lot of brewers, they expand, and then when they expand, they can't do that experimentation anymore, can they? It's gone. That's sort of gone unless they've retained a small kit to work on. But you guys can experiment and try different things all the time.
Normally at this point we say, oh, what do you want to do? And a lot of breweries go, oh, we'd love to have a tap room. Well, you already have that. I think we've probably covered it, but would it be fair to say that in the next year, the thing you guys want is hopefully a bigger kit in the right location to be able to get your beer into, and then if you can go to distribute to a larger audience, that's what you want to do. There's not sort of a rocket science thing here. This is where you are.
Our first focus is to grow our audience locally and get more people through the tap room is essentially what we want to do. First thing is to develop locally and kind of get those people to us, and then we can kind of make those moves to push beer externally or to more pubs. I guess the hard thing for us at the moment, the pubs that we sell to are essentially more of a competition than the breweries, because we sell our beers and we want people to come to the tap room, and those guys want to sell the beers and get people to come to the pub. So it would definitely be expanded our reach a little bit.
And I noticed on your website you've got a web shop coming soon as well. How soon is soon? When you've got enough beer to sell on it, I guess. Yeah,
essentially. Again, it was another thing around time. Really, we just didn't have enough time to can and package beers, and more of on the admin side around having the cost around us getting hold of the labels and the cans and all of those kind of things. But now we've just taken order of 3,000 cans, so they're ready to go. I think I canned 200 beers last week, and again, all of our colour packaging is manual and not automated at all. So we fill every single can, we seam every can, we label it
one at a time. Yeah,
one at a time.
Yeah, each can takes about a minute from initial filling. Well, puts a semi-automatic filler. You've got automatic seamer, but it takes us transferring and then doing the label. So it's
it's a lot of manpower.
A minute per can, best case. It's a slog.
So, but we have got more labels, so we are going to be doing more canning. And as soon as we've got some kind of stock that we can hold, we'll launch a web shop. We've always held off because we didn't want to open a web shop and then not have an offer. I think that was our biggest worry, because then people will go and then maybe not come back. But then we've just not had the cans or the stock to be able to do it.
It's been a really interesting story, Dave, listening to all of this.
It's been quite enlightening. Like, I don't want to come across as condescending, but as I said at the start of the chat, I didn't necessarily, like you say, Daya and Bristol and everything that's in Bristol. And then sort of in between is Swindon, Cirencester, etc. And it's really interesting because it feels like it sounds from the way you've described it, but it's got its own little craft beer scene, which you guys are at the forefront of developing. And it's just really fascinating to find out all about that and what you guys are doing. Beers are ace. They'll have no problem going further afield when you get them to people.
So I've had 2 beers tonight, the Yellow One and the Any Day IPA. And if they'd have been served to me in Daya, I wouldn't have said, oh, what's this? They're really good beers. And that's, no word of exaggeration, they really are.
No, amazing. Thank you so much for your feedback.
We've sort of covered this a little bit, but in, say, 2 years' time, where would you want to be? What would your ideal be in 2 years' time?
At least 10 times the size of brew kit, probably 5-10 times the size of space, and probably both be working with a couple of staff here or there to do some stuff for us.
A couple of staff would be nice.
Yeah.
Dan just wants help, doesn't he? I can see it as the tired man.
Nice. That'd be the dream. We've no aspirations of being. I'm sure everybody says this, but genuinely, we know aspirations of being huge.
And we're both absolute control freaks. So even having a staff member and letting go one little bit would be so difficult. And I think that is, for us, this business has been grown literally from the ground up, from nothing. And I think it would just be lovely to be as heavily involved as we are now, and still be able to grow and kind of see it through and see where it gets to, really. It'd be nice to not have to go back to work, but we'll see.
The dynamic between you two, do you argue about this sort of stuff, or is it just healthy debate between the two of you, or do you actually...
We argue about some stuff, but not generally about this. This is kind of, this tends to probably go back and forth until we sort of give up on the conversation. And I like to say, usually have a few beers or move on to a different topic. Head in the sand kind of mentality. Yeah, we don't really argue. We just sort of go quiet on each other occasionally.
And I think it's always a way. It's like we're both up for kind of admitting that we were wrong, but at the same time, we're both up for giving the other one's idea a go. We've had to be that way because we've had to learn so much. If we'd have kind of butted heads over every little thing, the business wouldn't exist anymore, because we're both in a position where we needed to learn and grow together. And to do that, we have to make mistakes. We couldn't have done it along the way without. And I think, that's a big thing for us, that no matter what we kind of personally think, whenever we kind of sit down and talk, is always a safe space. And, we can just kind of get to the bottom of what we need to, because we often need to make big decisions quickly, just because of kind of where we find ourselves in the market. And, with our plans going forward, we don't have a huge plan and, a massive warehouse of the stock. We kind of have to be quite reactive. And to do that, sometimes we need to make quick decisions and just be able to thrash it out. So yeah, the business wouldn't be here if we argued every day, for sure.
I feel as though that's been a really honest conversation, Dave. I don't know about you.
It's been really refreshing. It's been fascinating because it just comes across that you guys are passionate, which we often get on here anyway. But you're passionate, but you have a plan, but it all just seems to work, and it feels like you're going to make it work no matter what.
You've got it all going on. The energy between the two of you is quite clear to see. The beers are good. It sounds like you've created a wonderful community in your area with the drinkers there. Can only be good things ahead.
Yeah, I hope so. Really hope so. The crazy thing about this, obviously, again, relative to what we were saying earlier, didn't expect to be sat here right now, kind of thing, talking about beer a few years ago. But the great thing about it is, if it does go well, great. If not, we've had some absolutely amazing experiences along the way. Genuinely, I wouldn't have thought a few years we sat on a podcast talking about beer. I wouldn't have thought we'd have done the number of events we've done, or any of it really. Serving your own beer in a bar or doing a tap takeover at a place. And that sounds really weird, especially in the line of business. I mean, having a tangible product kind of thing and something you could attach like an amount of emotion to and stuff that you have to say is really such a cool place to be, the beer scene. And ultimately,
it's amazing how actually you can attach so much emotion to a can of beer, isn't it? But we do, and you obviously do as well.
That's it.
I think it's been a really interesting experience doing this, because I think, sometimes I speak for us both here, but I feel that we sometimes have a bit of imposter syndrome in the beer world.
There's absolutely no need to have that. I can tell you, absolutely not.
And I think it's just because of how we learned to brew and where we've got to now. But it's been a really interesting experience for me, because actually we've got so much more that we could talk about. But that's the thing, is just you don't know what you know until, I guess, you kind of sit down.
You don't know what you know until you know.
Yeah. And there's we touched on the name a little bit earlier. We touched on the artwork, all of our kind of experiences that way, and we could just go on for like another hour, couldn't we?
Yeah,
so
we do often.
How about
you come down the tap and we'll bore you there for about 3 hours.
How about we do this again in 12 months' time, and we can talk about it more and see where you are in a year's time. That'd be a really interesting experiment.
Absolutely, we'll be in a boardroom with suits and ties. Yeah, 12-month dream. Yeah, my 12-month dream.
Right, it's time to cue the music and ask what has been your favourite beer since the last episode, Dave. This is the bit we call Tried and Tested.
Yeah, so as you touched upon and also said put out on socials, I have done a little bit of travelling. Went off to Norfolk. The really good thing to see there was we went to places that I would have thought, 5 years ago wouldn't have even entertained craft. Holt, Sheringham, Cromer, a couple of seaside towns there, a market town. Now Holt I already knew had a really good craft bar called Chubby Seal, which I believe has been mentioned on previous episode.
Yep.
Went in again, had a lovely time, and hopefully we will hear a bit more from Chubby Seal in due course, but more on that at a later date. But then Sheringham and Cromer have dedicated places which are also coffee houses, which also have fridges, which also have a range of beers on tap. There's a company which is running a few of these places.
There's one in Sheringham opposite the station, isn't there?
Exactly, and it's the same people that have got one at Cromer now as well.
Yeah.
The Gangway and the Line's End. It sounds so patronising, but I don't mean it to be. But I didn't expect to see Sure Shot in Cromer.
No, it's weird, isn't it?
On keg,
For anybody that's never been to, Sheringham and Cromer, they're traditional British seaside towns, lots of families, lots of older people as well, probably. Not sort of trendy folks drinking hazy juice bombs.
Exactly, and yet that's what it was. And the other really good thing, just as sort of an aside for that trip, is wherever I went, duration were everywhere if I was finding anything. And that was just really good to see, because obviously they're one of the local craft breweries in Norfolk, and just they were everywhere. They were in shops, they were in bars, they were in fridges, and it was just really good to see. I didn't have my tried or tested beer in Norfolk. Instead, I had it at home on a Sunday afternoon.
Did you buy it from Norfolk?
I didn't even buy it from Norfolk. I have you to thank for it.
Oh, okay.
Because it was part of the last box you sent me, and it is a previous brew to me for yourself. Cold Shelter Brew Co. from Caldecott.
This is brilliant, because when I had them, I was really impressed. And it's just a single view, isn't it? It's just my view. It doesn't mean anything, really. It's just what I think. But it's nice to know that you've enjoyed the same beer as well and rated it very well.
I think you sent me 2 beers of theirs, and I was really, really impressed. I feel like they get a mention at least every other, if not every episode, but I got Dark Element type vibes, but different enough. Ironfoot is Citra Strata and Strata CGX, and the Strata, oh my goodness, really, really came through for me. I got loads of orange from it, and it made for a beer that I could remember, because it was a New England IPA, but it tasted different.
And the thing is, how many New England IPAs do we have? And you generally can't remember them. They have the same characteristics, but if you think about picking one out that you've had in the last month, it's hard, isn't it? But this one obviously stands out.
This is it. As you say, I'd easily have a few in a month, because they're a beer style I like. I find them easy drinking, but this one stuck out and continued to stick out a few weeks later. I've noticed they're just starting to pop up on some of the online bottle shops and things like that, aren't they? They're getting out there, and if anyone does see them, I would highly recommend getting some.
Brilliant. Yeah, go for it. It's got the recommendation from both of us now. It's great when you find a brewery like this, you mention it, you talk about it, and then you start to see those cans appearing in bottle shops across the country. It's brilliant. It's like almost job done for us, isn't it, when we see them out there in the wild. Well, my favourite beer was a rhubarb and custard pale ale, which you're going to turn your nose up at.
Oh, I don't know. I like rhubarb and custard sweets, so I'm not against it.
Well, I saw this and I thought, what's this going to be like? It was from New Invention. It's part of their Scoop series. It was really, really good. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. This was at Lancaster Craft Brew Festival, and I was actually helping Carol, who runs the brewery and makes all the beer. Actually, he's just taken on a brewer, his first brewery member of staff, which is fantastic. I was actually helping him pour at Lancaster, and I was watching this beer. It was flying out. He did 2 kegs of this in a couple of hours. It was absolutely flying out, and people coming back and back and back. Several people saying it's the beer of the festival. And you just wouldn't expect that from a rhubarb and custard pale. 5.5%, but it had all the characteristics you'd want that we know from the sort of childhood sweets. It was really, really good. Massive thumbs up there to New Invention from Warsaw.
It sounds like with this one, it's absolutely knocked out of the park.
But when so many people are coming back for it and asking it for again and again, and there was literally some people coming back, and we'd done 2 kegs, and the look of disappointment on people's faces that it had all gone and they couldn't have any more. So, yeah, great beer.
Daftaboutcraft. And now it's time for Hype or Tripe.
Well, it's Hype or Tripe time, but we were just sort of saying, does this really belong in Hype or Tripe or not? I'm not sure now. When we first looked at the Kahia Nelson hop, it featured in Hype or Tripe. We're continuing our exploration of that hop now, but it feels sort of wrong. I think we've Hype or Triped it to death, really.
It's a weird hill to die on, isn't it? Yet here we are.
But anyway, this is the Hype or Tripe feature. We have a Kahia Nelson beer in the hope that we can actually start to enjoy this hop. Like I said at the start, we inadvertently had some on the last episode with a Weekend Project beer, which we absolutely loved. That was the first time we'd had Kahia Nelson in with any other hops. This beer we've got today is also in with other hops, so we're hoping desperately that it's okay. Now, I haven't opened my can yet. Dave has. He's giving me the faces. What were you thinking?
This comes from Three Legs Brewery from Bexhill-on-Sea. And when when we were initially doing the very first bit of this sort of hop discovery hop journey as it's become, I had a quick hunt while we were looking and found these guys had done a beer, and we sort of thought, oh, this is quite interesting. Like, it'd be fascinating to get a brewer's take, which we are getting in due course, which is really good. These guys could have featured on Brew to Me. I think they could have featured on Brew to Me for you as well.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of them. The first I heard of them was when you mentioned that episode.
Very kindly sent us down 6 beers, so 3 each, one of which is this beer, the New Zealand Pale with Kahaya Nelson in it. I haven't tried any of their beers yet. I've been purposely waiting. You was talking there on Tried and Tested, Dave, about blind tasting. If you had this beer opened up and put under your nose, one brewery you would say this has come from, and one brewery alone.
Oh, well, I haven't smelt it yet. Let's do it. I know who you mean, but I'm not actually getting that much on the nose from it, weirdly.
Are you not?
No.
That's really interesting because...
Are you talking Verdant here?
Yes, 100%. Right. This is, for me, the nose of this is full-on sweaty socks. My wife poured it for me, was not impressed.
Right, well, when I poured it out, I got a little bit of a sweet hit rather than the sweaty socks hit.
I got full-on sweaty socks, which carries on into the taste.
I have opened the right beer, haven't I? The New Zealand Pale, yeah?
No, correct beer.
4.8%,
but
4.8%, that one.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, though. One beer can be two very different experiences for two different people.
This is fascinating. I'm getting sort of pineapple-y vibes from it and quite sweet.
To taste, I don't get a lot of fruit. It's mellow to start, and then the dankness comes back in. So for me, the beer it's most similar to is going back around, and it's the Flock Dipper, because it really hums of Kahaya Nelson to me.
We should say what else is in here. So, okay, one of my favourites, Rakow, but also I've just noticed that there is Nelson Bliss, which I'm going to guess is another strain of Nelson Sauvin, which is why you're getting that sweaty sock thing.
And I love Nelson Sauvin. I mean, this is, for 4.8%, crikey for me, this is so powerful.
Yes, that really does pack a massive punch, doesn't it?
For me, it's quite a nice way to finish with this hop. I think of this hop now as real sweaty socks, dank hop, can be like a Sabro, although I'm still with Sabro. If used sparingly, can do something like with Weekend Project. And this isn't to knock 3 Legs, by the way. It's perfectly well brewed. No problem with it whatsoever. Geez, it's just a powerful hop for me. But your palate looks like it's a bit different to mine.
I'm liking this a lot.
There you go.
I don't think you're disliking it. It's just the aromas and the flavours you're getting from it don't necessarily suit you at this time.
I don't dislike it. I'm going to drink it and drink it quite happily. It's one of those where I've got this can, or if I say was in a pub or a bar and had a pint of it, I'd have the pint. I probably wouldn't go back again, but I wouldn't sort of go, oh no, I can't drink that. Like it's perfectly drinkable. I'm wondering if it might change a little bit as we go.
Well, we've got plenty more to talk about, so we can see what it develops into. But for me, it's quite different to the Weekend Project beer. I'd say it's somewhere between that and the Kahaya Nelson Flock Dipper. It's between the two for me, whereas you're edging more towards the Flock beer.
That said, I've just had another sip and it's levelling off a bit for me now.
Interesting. Is that because you're getting used to it, do you think, or is it changing in the glass?
Possibly column A, possibly column B.
I'll tell you what was interesting. So this is 3 Legs Brewing Company. I actually saw 3 Legs recently walk past me at the Brewers Congress in London. I was there on behalf of the podcast. Everybody wears name badges. You wander around looking at everybody's name badge, and I saw 3 Legs. By the time I'd sort of clicked, it was 3 Legs, he'd gone. But yeah, he did walk past me. I wish I'd have said hello now. Anyway, so we can now actually hear from Jono from 3 Legs, who's joined by head brewer Seamus, to tell us all about the brewery and about this beer that we've been drinking.
My name's Jono. I'm from the 3 Legs Brewing Co. and I'm with Seamus.
Hey, yep, I'm the head brewer at the 3 Legs Brewing Company.
And we're a brewery based down in Bexhill on the south coast. We've been going for about 10 years this year. Started life in a shipping container on a little farm in Breed, Broad Oak. 10 years later, we're in a larger brewery space. Moved here about 1.5 years ago, so it's allowed us to get a few more tanks, brew some more beer, branch out a little bit further. We brew treater-style beers. It's always sort of struggled to how we go about describing ourselves, but I think we brew beers that are our take on sort of classic styles, and then maybe we branch out a little bit further from there into sort of things that we find interesting. We brew a mix of cask and keg. casks range from nice, easy, sort of sessionable pales with, perhaps slightly different takes on hops used, a little bit more complexity going on, up to sort of big, bolder things like our ESB. We're not afraid to put anything in cask, so we've just casked some IPA with Centennial and Galaxy, which is traditionally a keg beer for us. But yeah, we like to sort of experiment and whack a few things in casks that you don't often see. Keg-wise, our kind of core beers are that sort of sessionable take. So things like our Session IPA that we've been brewing for a good 7 or 8 years. And then things like our New England Pale Ale, Citra and Strata, and IPA with Sabro. But yeah, we like to mix it up and sort of change what we do. Seasonality comes into it. We brew sort of European style things as well. So just sort of nice range. We like to kind of explore different things. The beer that we're chatting about today is the New Zealand Pale. So Seamus can tell you a bit more about the beer itself, how we've used hops in it.
So the New Zealand Pale is a beer we tend to brew spring and summer. Something nice, refreshing, light. We've brewed it the last 2 or 3 years, I think. And what we tend to do with it is keep the malt base the same, so nice, easy drinking. And then we change the hops a little bit, but choosing hops from New Zealand. So last year we tried the Nectaron, which was a new hop, blended with a bit of Rakau and 1 or 2 others. I can't remember exactly. This year, the Nectaron, I think, was sold out, even though I really like that hop. But we found a new supplier in Freestyle Hops, and they sort of sent me a list with some interesting varieties that I hadn't quite seen. So those were Nelson Bliss and Kohaya Nelson. The Nelson Bliss is meant to be like Nelson Sauvin, but I think it's just been treated slightly differently, so you get more tropical notes and less of that sort of wine flavor coming through. We blended those in our dry hop to see what they would be like, because they read really nicely. They were both meant to bring sort of your tropical fruits like guava and sweet fruits coming through. We found that after dry hopping it, tasting it in tank, it actually came a little bit different. And I don't know if it's the Kohaya Nelson or the Nelson Bliss. We're getting notes of a light cannabis flavor coming through, so like refreshing botanical style, and then it sort of leaves you with the sweet fruits at the end, like you taste like a little bit of guava, a little bit of passion fruit. The nose is also really interesting. Yeah, so it is quite nice for a beer like this for us to try and sort of blend some hops that we haven't tried before. Because the malt base stays the same, it sort of gives those hops, you can taste them a bit more, I suppose, as opposed to changing loads and putting loads of blends of hops in. The other thing, I tend to not always go single hop, although that is an interesting thing that we have done in the past. Both of the hops seemed, that they would be a nice blend together, because I thought I would get more passion fruit flavors and then maybe Nelson Bliss would come through in the background, but it turned out to be a bit stronger and come the other way. So I think the Kohaya Nelson is doing the background job of giving you that finishing taste of sweet fruits, whereas the Nelson Bliss is giving you that stronger botanically flavor in the beginning.
So yeah, I mean, if you're ever down in this neck of the woods on the south coast, near Hastings or Bexhill, then come and say hello. We've got a tap room, it's open at the weekends, and if you ever fancy a pint in Bexhill, then love to see you down here. We also have a bar in a Heist Market, which is like a food hall in St Leonard's on Sea. Again, if you're ever in that neck of the woods and want to try a few things, then come and say hello. Enjoy the beer. Cheers.
Well, there is a brewer's take on Kohaya Nelson and how it's being used in this beer. I was sort of sipping away on that while he was chatting there. If anything, for me, it's got, not that it was very dank to start with, but less dank and more fruity.
It's getting a little bit less dank, but not that much more.
Oh, okay.
The thing I'm really fascinated by is it just shows that I must be quite susceptible to that danky, sweaty sock beer, which is why I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Verdant. Like, actually, funnily enough, just to go back slightly to try and test it, when I went to Chubby Seal, it was early afternoon on a Saturday. A few beers were on, one of which I did take away, which was, because it's Oktoberfest season, had the Lowenbrau Oktoberfest beer, took a litre of that away, enjoyed that. But the selections on tap, I was a bit torn as to what to go for. I went for a Verdant because it was a session pale, fully expecting to be regretting my choice quite quickly. It was the least Verdant beer I've ever had.
And for anybody listening to this thinking, what are they talking about? What is the trademark of a Verdant beer?
vegetal nose. It's that sort of oniony, sweaty, funky. If you happen to know people who like to smoke certain things, it smells a little bit like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Weedy. There was a time where every Verdant beer, for me at least, would smell like that veggie Verdant.
Going back some episodes now on Tried and Tested, I'd had various Verdants on an afternoon out, and I got stuck into them a little bit on Tried and Tested because they all basically smelled and tasted very, very similar.
Yeah, so that beer was a little bit of a revelation because I don't particularly seek Verdant out. Regular listeners will know that we do not particularly endorse the yearly putty celebration these days.
Oh, God, that'll be coming around again soon.
They are still a very good brewery in their own right, who have done some really, really good beers over the years.
Yeah, I mean, give Verdant their dues. They've got the likes of Light Bulb,
Headband, Even Sharks Need Water.
They're beers that you see a lot, not necessarily in craft places. They've sort of transcended beer culture and available in more general places. We just seek out the more interesting stuff these days, don't we? That's the thing.
Yeah, we've sort of gone a little bit off topic, but
I'm all for going off topic.
I don't hunt their stuff out. It is rare for me to have one of their beers, but as I say, it was a pleasant change, and it did make me think, oh, perhaps I should have a little try if I see something on tap. I will say the only thing as well is, if you see their stuff on tap, it does come with a bit of a price tag these days. It's never that cheap. The one I had was fine. They're not afraid to put their 7-8% beers on tap, which is fine. Absolutely no problem with that. But I do find if I see it, I know I'm going to be paying for it.
Yeah. That's another reason to go with small, lesser-known breweries, because they don't charge you through the nose. What I think about it, I've got to give a massive shout-out to Cryche Brewery in Derbyshire, who featured on Brew to Me some time back, and in the last month opened their tap room for the very first time.
And I assume you've already been?
Well, I went on the opening day.
Oh, there we go.
Wow, incredible. A little unit. The queue for the bar was just sort of round the block. And we were there for like 2 or 3 hours. And the queue just didn't decrease. It was so well supported. And how wonderful to see that. A little brewery getting massive support from an area that is rich in beer. There's a lot of breweries around there, traditional and craft, but everybody turned out. It was a lovely day, which helped. There was an outside area. It was absolutely packed. There was people everywhere. So when we got to the front of the queue, Lloyd, whose brewery it is, he was there serving, said hi to him. I took a few pictures and stuff. We got 3 pints when we got to the front because the queue was so long, we knew we wouldn't be able to queue again to get back there. But how wonderful to see a tiny brewery so well supported. It was brilliant.
Again, it sort of chimes with the sort of theme of this episode, though, doesn't it? Because you say they're Derbyshire, like, again, somewhere else with just a really thriving scene. Everyone seems to do really, really well. At some point, I'd like to go to Torside Smoke Fest.
That was just recently, wasn't it? I saw lots of promotion for it.
Happens in September.
Yeah.
So one day we'll get to Torside Smoke Fest. One day we might, if we feel enough water has passed under the bridge, get Torside back on to have a chat. Regular
listeners will know that we once had, we were going to have Torside on the podcast.
We had Torside.
We had them, but some moron who oversees the audio managed to lose it, having spilt a very sticky stout on his computer. Do you remember?
I do remember. And again, their beers are great. They don't quite make their way down here very often.
They've got their tap room, they've got their events, the beer doesn't need to go that far. It's fine, Tell you what is interesting, talking about tap rooms and beers that don't get that far. We visited a brewery called Loon Brewco, as in the River Loon, in Lancaster. Their beers don't make it down as far as me, and certainly not to you. But they're really big up there. They've got a lovely tap room, but their beers are really well thought of locally. Everybody's heard of them. And they shifted a huge amount of kegs at the Lancaster Craft Brew Festival. Huge amount. Mainly, I guess, to local people who know their beers. But we went to their tap room as well. What a great place that is. It's so good to visit tap rooms and sort of see people enjoying beers. And you're always surprised because you never know what to expect when you go in. There was this massive brew kit in there. And I just didn't expect it because we don't see their beers. But they're brewing on quite a big scale.
I think this is where we both are with how we sort of enjoy craft beer, and also what we find that there are a lot of places in the UK, there are craft breweries absolutely thriving within a really small radius, and that's fine. Which is kind of the point, really, isn't it?
It is, and it's great to see it can work for some breweries. This was out in the sticks, about sort of 4 or 5 miles from Lancaster, but nothing around it. We also went to Farmyard when we were around there, which is very much reminiscent of Nothing Bound in the fact that it's just open fields around it. Again, it's great space, big brewing operation, and lovely atmosphere in there. It's just great to get out and about and see where beer is brewed and visit tap rooms and meet people. It's really interesting.
But to put a bow on this then.
Yes.
As we have covered a fair amount of ground there. I don't want to not give Three Legs their due.
We should circle back round to it.
This is a good beer, and I'm very excited to try the other 2 beers they sent down, one of which is a session pale, and I forget which the other one is. But it goes with that thing again of, a brewery in an area that we don't know of, but chucking out good beer.
Yeah, and long may all this last, long may breweries find a niche in their own little area and make it work for them. With regard to this beer...
You like it.
I really like it. I really like it.
I don't dislike it. At the same time, I wouldn't have it again. But that is no knock on the beer or the brewery. I think I can now confidently say, unless I would almost need to know the hopping rate and the quantities involved for Kahia Nelson. It's one of them.
You're just a Kahia Nelson hater, Dave.
Hater feels a bit strong. It's a hop that I think, for my palate, it seems to really...
it's just too much.
If it's used sparingly, as we found previously, then it can be, for me at least, quite enjoyable. If it's used sort of as a single hop or the dominant hop, then it's a bit much for me. But if you like Galaxy, I'd say if you like, as we sort of said, if you like Verdant beers and how they brew their beers, you'll like this hop.
Do you know, I think if I had another can of this here now, I'd open it and drink it. So strange how the same beer can be interpreted so differently, and that's a great way to end this. Actually, that very point.
Yeah, because we've ended up at 2 very different points in the journey, haven't we? I've got my views on the hop and what I think of it. Almost come full circle round to you'd sort of be like, oh, it's Kahia Nelson beer. Yeah, I don't mind that. I'll try it.
Bring it on. It's all about opinions, and 2 quite differing opinions there. But the overarching thing to take from this is that you don't really like Kahia Nelson. I'm happy with it. But as for the beer, 3 Legs is doing a good job. It's a good beer. And we're both excited to try the other ones he sent to us.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that chat about the Kahia Nelson hop. Hype or Tripe will be back on our next episode, of course, when I'm not going to tell you exactly what we're doing, but to let you know that episode 66 will be out at the end of October, so Halloween time, so make your own minds up what we might be talking about. We've also got an interview with Only With Love Brewing. We'll see you in a few weeks' time with our next episode, powered by the Craft Brew Festival and Mosaic Board Printers.
Daft About Craft.